Hello, Georgetown. I'm Beverly Enos, and you're watching Spotlight Georgetown. You can find us Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on your local cable station. You can find us usually, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, all kinds of strange hours, but the Spotlight Georgetown segment is usually Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Now, if you want to become part of the segment, or part of the show, that's when you want to come and be part of it and learn how to run the cameras and use the equipment. And they have some really neat gadgets down here. And every year they have bigger gadgets and more fun stuff. And so if you're looking to do something for your organization, or if you have time on your hands and you would like to just learn how to run cameras and do things like that, let us know. If you would like to be on the show, please let me know. I'm in the phone book. And if you would like to volunteer your absolutely best friend, please let me know, and we'll make sure that we get your absolutely best friend on the show as well. So today we're talking to Richard Cioletta. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Pretty good. Yeah. Okay. And now, Richard, where are you from? You're not from Georgetown, but we're going to be talking
Mass.
kind of a general thing today.
I was
so
born
and
raised in Haverhill, yes.
So you're pretty local.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty local to what's going on.
Yeah.
You actually work for a company called ServPro, which is where you get your information and your experience from.
Right.
And we're going to be talking today about safety and things like mold issues and water damage and how to protect things and how to get ready, how to get your home ready for the winter.
Correct.
Which is just around the corner.
Yep.
We don't want to talk about that SNOW word yet, but it's just around the corner.
It is considered our season, as they say.
It's your season.
We're coming into our season.
So you do things like you take care of water damage, of fire damage,
Correct.
all those types of things.
Yep.
Now, this past year, I didn't realize I had a puddle in my basement, and they said, "What's that from?" And I called the plumber, and I called the air conditioning guy, and it was like 3 different companies later. I found that I had a hose in my washing machine that had been leaking for weeks.
Wow.
Weeks and weeks, and I have no idea how long it was happening until I got my water bill. And when that was almost $300, I realized how long it had probably been leaking.
Yeah.
So I had to call companies in to come in and help service and deal with the water damage.
That's one of the major things we do.
Take a look at the mold issue. Is there a mold issue, or is there not a mold issue? So that's the type of thing that you would deal with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So getting our homes ready for winter, what type of things should we be looking at?
The first thing, if you're a homeowner, you definitely want to make sure your furnace has been checked.
Okay.
There are gas furnaces, oil-fired. Some even have an electric heating system. The oil-fired furnaces tend to be a little dirtier burning because fuel is actually going into the furnace.
And it's a live flame.
And it's a live flame, and it can cause a puffback or ghosting, which is the fuel doesn't burn completely, and so you have an exhaust that gets into the house. And so we run into that a lot. Not so much now, because they are making furnaces a lot better than they used to, but sometimes you'll hit the homeowners that have the 50-year-old furnace, and even though servicing it every time, it's still a machine that will break.
Okay.
And so we run into situations where we have to go in and clean the soot out of houses, and that can be a boiler with a baseboard heat, water, or it can be a forced hot air. Forced hot air, of course, is going to be worse because it's going to blow that soot right up into the house pretty easily. So that's one of the cleaning things we do. On a furnace with water, you can have baseboard problems. Of course, you have those cold spells that we get.
Right.
You have that cold corner of your house that the baseboard can freeze pretty easily and then breaks, because it's amazing how copper just splits open when the water is frozen.
Okay.
And then because it thaws out sooner or later and it starts leaking. With the other boilers, the radiator type.
So it's not the problem when the pipe freezes, it's the problem when the pipe freezes and it thaws
When
out.
it thaws, right.
It's frozen.
When it freezes, you're going to notice no heat.
Right.
But when it thaws, you're going to notice water.
And then all of a sudden, it's got a crack in it, it's going to start leaking, and we make phone calls.
Yes.
Okay.
On the boilers that have the radiators, a lot of houses have radiators, or just that type of system, you can have a automatic fill valve that can maybe get stuck open. And what happens is the radiator, which is supposed to be steam, fills with water. and then then the system shuts down, it can freeze, and you can have things leaking up in the house as opposed to just the basement. Or you can have, on a boiler that's a baseboard heater, you can have one that there's a relief valve when the pressure gets too high.
Yep.
It can just open and the water will just start pouring out of that relief valve. That happens a lot when there's different issues with the furnace. So that's a few of the things I've seen in water damages we've gone to.
So people need to get hold of whoever, I mean, some people have a company that comes in and services on an annual basis. They pay an annual fee.
Yep.
And they come in and service.
Yep.
But if they don't have that, they should actually call someone in.
They should think about it,
and
yep.
get an inspection and say, is my furnace ready for the winter?
Yes, is it like the oil companies, where you have an oil delivery guy, a lot of times they'll service.
Okay.
Or they'll have somebody that come in and do that. Gas furnaces, you don't have that person there every month or every 2 months. So you have to actually call someone to do that.
I mean,
and they tend to need a little less maintenance because it's a gas that's coming into your house as opposed to a liquid.
So there's,
yeah,
you don't think about that live
you don't
flame
think
with
it
oil
right. You don't
leaking.
think about it as there's still a live flame, but you don't think about it as much because it runs a little bit more efficiently than an oil does. But
Now, I'm thinking about people have their cars and they automatically would get the windshield washer stuff filled so that they have enough windshield washer stuff for the winter. They'd get their tires checked. They'd do all these things. But they don't do that for their homes, do they?
No, you don't think about that.
They really don't.
Till it happens.
Until it's too late and you've got a puddle in the basement or you don't have heat.
Right.
Or something's going wrong.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're freezing cold or you've got no power or there's something else going on.
Yeah.
And then it's, of course, it's a Sunday.
It's an emergency.
So you're paying a Sunday fee, you're paying an emergency fee, and all of it. Okay.
Yes, yep.
So those are the types of things. So,
that's the furnaces
so
are
number one,
very
having your furnace system checked. What about your hot water system?
The hot water heater, again, some people do have it off their furnace, the hot water comes through.
Right.
I've seen a lot of
I
people
don't,
converting to the on-demand type system where there's no water tank in your basement.
Okay.
It just heats the water as it goes through, so you don't have any storage. So but again, anything mechanical can go wrong. It's always good to make sure they're maintained and they're looked at every once in a while. If they're in a basement, go down every once in a while. I know every once in a while we'll have some seniors that just can't go down the basement anymore.
Right.
They up and down the stairs. So, we're always glad to come out and take a look. And if you think something's going wrong, and we can just kind of scope it out for you, check it out, see if it's okay. And you're talking about the mold with the water. Mold is usually with that mold, it's time. Time is our enemy because the faster we can get to your house to help you, the better it is. If on a situation like yours where it was going over time, the mold could have gotten worse because it's just when something stays wet for a long period of time,
Well, there
mold
was all
will
this.
just grow.
There was all this black stuff,
Yeah.
and there was a question. As it turned out, it was dryer lint that had just kind of dried, and it was black.
Yeah. So,
And it wasn't mold, but I
that's
did
good.
have to have
That's
somebody
good.
come out, and they said, you have to do it sooner rather than later
Right.
because mold can grow within 24 to 48 hours. It can spread, especially if you have heat on.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
air conditioning
Sure.
on your house system.
Yeah.
It can spread through your whole house.
Yeah.
Within 24 to 48 hours, and people can get really sick.
Yeah. And the biggest thing with mold is you've got certain groups of people that are more susceptible, elderly,
And children.
and the children and pregnant females. You're going to have a problem with just your body is just changing and different. So
Okay, or people with COPD, or asthma.
right? Any medical issues. Somebody like myself who doesn't have that type of thing. It doesn't. It isn't something that bothers me.
Okay.
But people who do, definitely, it's something you don't want to have hanging around, lingering in your house. I mean, you think to yourself, your house is a box. Put stuff in the box, it can't get out. It's just in the box right now. So it's not like it's summertime where you can open windows.
Right,
In the
especially
winter,
as we
everything
come into
shuts
the
down.
season.
Right, everything shuts down, and you've got this nice little
Close
box.
the doors, you close the
Right.
windows, everything is
And
inside.
you've got damp stuff just sitting there, and
Okay.
and that was your issue down in the basement that you had? Or was it in the first?
Well, I saw this puddle in the basement,
Okay.
but my laundry room was actually on the main floor.
Okay, yeah.
And it had been leaking down into the basement.
Yeah, because basements are normally humid anyway, and
you know,
moisture filled.
how often do I go into the basement?
Right, there you go. Yeah, so you wouldn't notice.
Yeah,
and behind a washer.
And the
it's dripping
washer
there.
was working, the
Yeah.
dryer, everything was working.
Right. It was
So I
just
had
that
no
drip.
idea how long it was going. until I got the water bill, and I had the water department, and he said, it was probably going for a good 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow, yeah.
Not
yeah.
a lot, but it was
Yeah,
definitely.
and on the washing
was
machines,
the
the
hose.
biggest thing that's the problem is the crimps on those
Mm-hmm.
hoses. Normally there'll be those, they have the wire type that cover it. It's a more,
Right.
sturdier one.
Which is what I have now.
Which is what you have now. Yeah, but
Yes.
the regular black hose with the crimp at
is
the
what
top.
I had then.
It's just a crimp. It's not like it's made into the thing. So
Yeah.
it's just crimped onto that. So over time, it gets brittle. I mean, you figure out something hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold, it gets brittle after a while. And no matter how good they're made,
Well, it was in the house 20
40 years
years.
later, you're gonna have a, right. you're
Did
gonna
I
have a
ever
problem.
think of checking the hoses on my washing
Right,
machine?
right.
Is that something people should do?
Always, yeah, definitely.
Really?
Definitely, you should always check. And well, like when you go away on vacation, you should make sure that is shut off, because a
There's
lot
a
of
little
times
thing behind the
there's a
washing
little-
machine. There's
There's a little
and it
knob
says
right
you
there.
can turn it off.
Turn it off. You should always make sure that's off.
Really?
Talking on that lane of going away, you should always make sure that someone is checking your home.
Right.
So you put somebody in charge of doing that,
Yeah.
somebody that will do that. We've had many people who have had so-called friend checking the house, and they don't go by the house at all. Or they get the mail and they just kind of go in and go out, and they're not really kind of checking. That seems to be, especially when you go away. The other thing with heating when you go away, a lot of people go to Florida. 50 degrees, setting your thermostat to 50 when we're having, negative 10-degree weather outside is not a great idea, because
It's not warm enough?
it's not warm. Well, hot air furnaces don't really mind that, because you're basically blowing hot air. But the baseboard heat, the water needs to move in those registers.
Okay.
But at 50 degrees, it's not going to move that much. So it tends to just sit. Now you've got that cold corner of your house, that negative 10-degree wind is blowing at that corner. It doesn't take much for that to freeze. So if the water is constantly moving, it's better than if it's just
So if you
idle
set
and
it
just
at
sitting.
60.
So 60 might be a better option for a water system. If you have the option to shut it down, that's even better. Just shut it off. But then you get into draining, and the house can, you don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
you really have to keep it at a thing. And sometimes 50 is acceptable, but that seems to be where we see a lot of the problems with these
People say 50
cold
is-
corners,
Well, it doesn't freeze until it's 32,
Yeah,
so 50
yeah,
should be
yeah.
fine.
And even at
No.
60, even leaving the cabinets open.
That
you
was
know?
my next
Yeah,
question.
and just letting that warm air, because most kitchens, if you look, what are you looking out when you're standing at your sink? A window.
A window.
So it's on an outside wall. Almost every house is set up pretty much the same. So that outside wall, again, tends to be, and it doesn't take much. We've had issues with rodents making a hole. And now the wind is easily blown in through that hole, because the mouse has made a hole. And now that wind is coming right at that house, that side of the house, and comes right in. And of course, what's there? A pipe. And the pipe freezes, and you go from there. So and things change all the time. Maybe that rodent wasn't there last year, but it was there this year. So inspecting, of course, the outside of the house, making sure you haven't
The
got
little
any
place where the dryer vent comes in and out, that's where
Yep. little critters.
I live in an area that I'm the only one that has a full basement.
Yeah.
So the critters really like my house.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't get very far, but they like my house.
Yeah.
And when I designed my house, luckily the person that I worked with said, do not put any water pipes on the outside of the home.
Right.
All of the water pipes and everything should be on the inside walls, not on the outside walls. But if we're having really, really cold temperatures, and the wind chill is what they're talking about,
Yes.
I go around all the bathrooms and all the sinks and everything else. I go around and I open all the doors, all the
Definitely.
cabinets.
Yeah.
Everything
Absolutely.
gets opened up.
Yeah, I mean,
So
last year we had that one day, that February 14th, Valentine's Day, was the only cold day we had last year, and everything popped. Everything popped, because
Really?
it was just that. Well, it was a Sunday.
Of course.
Everything.
Sunday.
So you go into these commercial businesses, they're all shut down. You go into these, and that Monday I think was a holiday.
Holiday.
So they weren't coming in again. So that time, it was a perfect storm of when it happened. That it was the coldest day when the places were shut down, and we had many, schools. And
Okay,
with school
we've-
vacation
So
was.
we've talked about homes.
Yeah.
Let's go to the businesses.
Okay, yeah.
How do the businesses protect themselves? Because, you might have a 20, 30, 40,000 square foot business.
Yeah.
How are they going to protect themselves from this type of problem?
Yeah, well, again, the heat situation, you can't, just don't, a lot of times people, like with schools, when they're on vacation, they'll idle down everything, the boilers will go down to a minimum level, but it causes such a disruption sometimes with all the different things that happen. I think we had 2 or 3 schools in Haverhill that ended up with water damages different furnaces broke and stuff, so.
I work in senior centers, primarily in senior centers, and there was one that I work in that they lost all the pipes in the attic area because they had put the heat down.
Yep.
The pipes all froze. Everything went down. They lost all their hardwood floors.
Yeah, yeah.
The entire, it was about, they said it was about 30,000 square feet of hardwood flooring that had to be
Wow,
replaced.
wow.
On top of the walls, the ceilings.
And how much would it
everything.
have been if they left the heat on for the weekend, you know?
Right.
You're really saving yourself so much more. I know in Haverhill, one of their losses, they lost the whole library.
Yeah.
The library was just totally destroyed, so, yeah, that's just, it's common sense. I think we think about, well, we're not gonna be here, so we'll turn it down to 50. But
Yeah.
again, that just keeps, you've got that strong cold wind outside, and it doesn't take much to make that building cool off. And once the heat's off, once it
It's too
fails,
late. It's too
you're
late.
done, yeah, so.
And they didn't even know for days and days once they reopened the building because it didn't start leaking until it thawed out.
Yep.
Which is what we talked
Yeah,
about earlier.
yeah. I know a
and
lot
then
of
the
businesses
comment
have-
was, well, insurance will pay for it. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, they have large
It didn't.
deductibles sometimes, those
Right.
buildings like that.
Right.
That's a big thing we see with condos. The deductibles can be $25,000 for each loss. So if you own a condo, now that's, basically the condo association is a business, so they don't want a lot of the $1,000 things that go on. They want the major things, they want to be able to take care of the major things. So that 25,000, you have to make sure that is covered under your own policy plus your contents. So you always have to cover a little bit of the structure, which is basically the deductible of the condo association, plus all your contents. That's
Okay.
what you're like liable for. so.
Now, we haven't talked about this yet, but fireplaces, people that have wood stoves and fireplaces, they should get their chimneys.
Chimneys, yep,
They should get their
So-
chimneys cleaned.
Yep.
Call a chimney sweep,
Yep.
have them come in, make sure that the chimney is cleaned.
right,
Because chimney fires can be devastating.
yes, yes. And it all depends on what you're burning too. If you tend to burn a lot of pines, that's a lot of creosote and a lot of other that stuff in there that will create the creosote, or an oil furnace. That's another thing that's, again, the burning. If it's not burning properly, you're gonna get a lot of soot going up the chimney. Gas, of course, is burning clean, so there's not gonna be a lot of issue there. But it depends what you're burning, and definitely wanna have it checked all the time. I'm in the middle of getting a new wood stove, so I'm kinda like, we're doing the whole
Okay.
thing, and I've never had a new one. And the guy is telling me, you're gonna notice a big difference because we've always gotten somebody else's secondhand.
Right?
So it's already been used and,
Yeah.
kind of broken down a little bit. There's a lot of different seams and stuff in there that you need insulation on to keep it airtight.
Okay.
And that can create a lot of
So that's another
issues.
thing. So make
Yeah.
sure that the wood stove is actually properly
Properly,
working, just
right.
like your furnace.
Right, yeah, definitely. And make
Okay.
sure what you're burning is good wood.
Aged.
Is aged and good and
It's
not,
aged
yeah.
in hardwood.
Right, because, a hardwood, because you start burning something that's bad, it's gonna only clog your chimney up, so.
And I have a lady again in one of my senior classes, and she said, but I had I think it was squirrels that nested in her chimney, and she didn't want to light the chimney because of that.
Uh-oh.
So she didn't have the chimney cleaned.
Oh.
She ended up with a chimney fire
Oh, gosh, yeah.
because the animals got in and they had nested.
Yeah.
They had all the nesting materials in the chimney.
Right, which
And
is
when-
leaves and everything else, yeah.
When the
hay,
animals finally left, and she could light her fireplace, by then it was full of
yeah.
animal,
Yep,
nesting materials.
yep.
And
Yeah, you always want to make sure your flue is working properly, because we've had some that, seems to be pellet stoves. Sometimes the feeder will malfunction, so that, I don't know how this happens, but sometimes the fire gets into the box where all the pellets are, and of course, at that point.
backwards?
Well, yeah, at that point, the smoke starts coming into the house because it's not going out the
Oh.
normal way.
Okay.
So we've had some, issues with that type of thing, or just from age, the churner or whatever they call that thing that has to feed the pellets in
Okay.
to do that. That seems to be, but,
So-
and I know another few things, don't ever burn evergreens in your home. Do you ever see a Christmas tree go up in flames? How the intensity that
it's
initially
immediate.
burns, the sound is deafening. We've had a few that, I'll just get my wreath off my mantle and throw it into the fire,
Fire.
and it just explodes into
Okay.
a very, very dangerous, because it's so intense for just that minute, but it can catch the rest of the house
So
on fire.
if
pretty
people have
quickly.
evergreens on their
Def-
fireplace,
outside.
don't take it and
Never,
put it in the
never
fireplace.
burn them inside. No, never
Okay.
do that. Yeah, and those are some things I've seen.
In
just,
another typical, don't take the gas grill, put it inside your garage, and be
Right.
cooking all winter in your gas grill
Right.
in your garage.
Right. Right. Same thing with turkey. This is a turkey
That was the
thing.
next one.
Yeah, the turkey.
Turkey
the
season,
turkey
Thanksgivings,
fryers.
Christmases.
Turkey fries.
Do not use them inside the garage.
Never in the garage, never on a deck, far away from the house. Make sure that the turkeys are thawed, because if you put a frozen turkey into that hot oil, I know
It's
that
wet.
it just almost explodes basically. And that the water and oil don't go together well.
Right.
And, yeah,
I
you
mean,
just
we
wanna-
had Longview. The fire there
Yes.
was from a gas grill
was-
on a
yeah,
deck.
on a deck, yeah. And those decks are not big. I know I've been over there. Yeah, they're not big at all. Yeah.
So those are the types of things that people need to really pay attention
Yeah,
to.
yeah, and it is the type of thing. It won't happen to me. I'll watch it, but once it happens, it's so fast that you can't
How many
react
times have I
quickly
seen
enough.
in condos up in ski area, a little teeny hibachi on the corner of
Yeah.
a deck?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's this little, it's only a little teeny hibachi, but it's on
Doesn't
the
take
corner of the
much.
deck and boom,
Doesn't take much.
off it goes.
Yeah. Back to the commercial stuff. Businesses, your property, your library, you've got people coming and going at your property.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have to make sure, your walks are shoveled, they're sanded, they're not slippery. Your stairs, your railings, all that is all in good condition. That's all stuff that's kind of a personal property thing, but it can create issues on a commercial end too.
Make sure somebody has plowed the driveway.
Make sure make sure all that stuff that kind of comes into play while you're property, make sure if you see, we had one of those windy ice storms or whatever, and some branches are hanging, when it's going to fall when someone's walking by your building,
course.
so you call the tree service and have them come out and
Right.
take care of that. Sometimes even with, that's building owners, but renters, same thing, make sure your management companies know about the issues that might be, at the building. Sometimes
Okay.
they may not inspect it all the time. They may not be there all the time. And it's better to be proactive and so someone doesn't get hurt with that type of thing.
And sometimes if you're renting from a building,
Mm-hmm.
if you're renting an office space or any kind of space in a building, if they're not taking care of it, it's well worth it to just take care of it yourself.
Right.
Why have somebody get hurt?
Yep. It's better to, like you say, do it ahead of time and then instead of after. And I've been telling you about that for 3 weeks.
Right, and then just give them the bill. And
Yeah,
just,
yeah, whatever.
Deal with
that
it
is.
afterwards
Yeah,
with them.
Yeah, insurance coverage too is very important to keep track of during this time of year. You want to make sure you have insurance coverage and it's going to cover what could potentially, nowadays it doesn't take much in a home. You go to your house right now and you look at your inventory in your home and try to figure out how much it would cost to replace that. And then
Right.
look at what you're insuring it all for on your actual policy from your agent and see if it matches up in your head. And I know I've about maybe 15 years ago, I had
Personal property that's
personal
inside.
property, even the building.
Even the building.
The appreciation of building your building again. The prices are going up. They don't ever go down. And I know about probably 15 years ago, I told my agent, just add 10% every year. Just, give me a buffer. And there's a program I guess you can do that they will just automatically add a 10% price, like value. Like if it was 40,000 this year, they'll insure 44,000 next. So
Okay.
they'll kind of up it 10% each year until you get to a point where you just say, I think we're good.
So-
Because you figure inflation's terrible. So
Just because the house is assessed for $250,000, you could never rebuild that house
Right.
for $250,000.
right.
So you
Yeah,
have
you
to
don't want to
make
get
sure-
on the other end of that and
Right.
say, oh, well, all we have is 250 for you, but it's going to be 400 to pay that. You'll have to pay under 50 yourself because they don't give you any more than what they're insuring
No.
you for.
And then you have
Um,
to think about what
yes.
the value of whatever is inside.
Right.
And most people forget
Yeah,
that part.
we get into that with different clients of ours that we always want to make sure that they have insurance first of all. Of course, that's usually the first thing we have because we work with so many insurance companies. We know what they cover,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of gray areas. There's a lot of black and white. So it's like yes, they cover that. No, they don't. That type of thing. Storage, a sewer backup is one of those places that is very gray. If you're on a septic system, that's on your property. You're covered.
Right,
If you're on a town system or a city system,
yeah, which we don't have, so.
right, but they'll say, well, where was the blockage? They want to know where it blocked. Did it block on your property or was it in the street?
Okay,
Did you have to call the city to come and plug something? Did they accept responsibility for this? So you kind of go, and in most cities you can file a claim, but you only get a % back of what you actually put out.
Yeah.
But still, it's one of those gray areas. So it's kind of important to know if you have a septic or you run town sewer. So
okay.
um,
So the last big issue, I think, and especially coming into the season, we cover it
Yeah.
a little bit when we're talking about the turkeys and things
Mm-hmm.
like that with the gas stoves. But what other safety tips for inside the house, cooking during the holidays?
Make sure
Make
that
sure your oven is clean before you turn it on for the turkey.
It's not even the cleaning it, but you'd be surprised how many people store things in their oven. They put pizza boxes, or they'll put cake containers, empty cake containers. They had a birthday cake. For some reason, that birthday cake with the plastic dome and everything goes into the oven. I don't know why. I've never put anything in my oven.
It was easier than putting it out to the trash. It didn't fit in the trash container.
No, it still has cake in it probably.
Okay.
But it's just that, believe it or not.
And they turn it on.
Believe it or not,
heat
they
the oven.
preheat the oven,
and it
forget
melts.
it's in there. And that is the most terrible smell you ever want. But that plastic, burnt, petroleum, very potent smell. And it just
Which will not go away in time for Thanksgiving dinner.
You pretty much wreck the oven. You pretty much do that. But that seems to be the preheat thing. Yeah, it's just a strange thing.
Never thought of that.
The other thing we've noticed is like on the electric ovens, that little curly thing that heats up, it can actually malfunction. We've had a few people that turn it on and maybe put the turkey in. Now turkey cooks 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
You really don't pay attention to it that much.
Right.
You don't go in and check it every minute. So walk out of the room, go do whatever you're doing, and that thing malfunctions. Now the temperature you set at 350 to cook it is all of a sudden 500 because that mechanism has somehow malfunctioned. And now you're in the other room and the turkey is being cooked to absolutely nothing. And you come back 3 hours later and the turkey's gone because it's just burned to nothing. And that protein fire that we call it, the smell is even worse than the petroleum because it's an invisible. All you would come into this room, you'd see this room basically the way you see it, but the smell would be horrid, and it would be that turkey, that protein that you baked, all that meat, all those bones are gone, and it's all just stuck. It's like a very sticky residue that gets onto things. Ew. Yeah, and it's not good, and it's a very hard thing to clean.
That reminds me of a story. I have a friend that she was doing a large party, and she had put chicken wings in the oven.
Yep.
And she didn't forget them. Well, I guess she did forget them there, but it was like the third batch or something, and she didn't really need them.
Oh.
Well, about 3 months later.
Oh no.
Ovens are pretty well sealed.
Yeah.
So there was no smell. There was nothing. About 3 months later, she turned the oven to preheat to do something else.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the stench from the chicken wings that had been in there for the 3 months was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Because I was bringing food in to do some other things with her, and I'm thinking, what is that stench?
Yeah.
And she didn't even really notice it because she was in another part of the house.
Oh, yeah.
And it was 3-month-old chicken wings in the oven, and probably that same exact thing.
Same idea. Yeah, because the different cleaning methods we use are different for each thing. That needs a little bit more deodorization type cleaning. The puff back we talked about earlier is pretty much just a general type cleaning. We use our chem sponges to take off all the soot.
So these things can be taken care of.
Yes, definitely.
They can.
Yes, they can be taken. Oh, sure.
But professionally.
Yes, definitely.
This is
that
not
one
an
there is
easy
a tough
oven thing.
That one there tough is pretty much get rid of the oven or get rid of the microwave, whatever it was that you annihilated the turkey with. Get rid of it because it just gets inside of that whole unit. And we can clean the outside, wash the outside, but the inside is where the problem is. So a lot of times the appliance actually has to just go. And you notice a 50% drop in the smell of the house right off the bat once that appliance is gone. And then the cleaning is, and if you notice a lot of cabinets are butted next to each other, sometimes, over time they may separate, and, any of that stuff can get up inside
the
there.
stench will just
that odor can, so it's very important.
The wood.
And, yep, and sometimes we've had some that are houses that have actually had a refinishing of the wood because that tackiness that gets on there, especially if it's a polyurethane or something, and then you get the heat, sometimes can kind of make it soft enough so that can kind of get in there. You actually have to resurface, refinish them type thing. So so it's a very everyone has its own characteristics that we kind of deal with.
So I think the gist of all of this is think ahead.
Yep.
You have to think ahead when we're coming into a season that you're going to be closing the doors, closing the windows, and literally locking yourself in a box.
Yes.
With gas, oil, electricity, stoves, dishwashers, any of those types of things.
Any of that stuff. Yeah.
That can all malfunction. And especially, you know, if the houses or the appliances, I built a house, everything was fine. And now all of a sudden, everything is 20 years old.
Right.
And it's all 20 years old at the same time.
Yeah.
Which means
Yes.
everything's going to go
Right.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And
so,
you run into that issue.
yeah, be proactive about just inspection.
Right.
Just go. It doesn't have to be this major inspection. You don't have to have technicians come in or whatever. Just like if you don't ever go to your basement, maybe just take a walk around, see if you see puddles, see if you see dripping, you know, that type of thing. And like you said, yours was hidden, so you wouldn't, if you go down the basement, if you had went down right away, you probably would have seen that right away. But it's the type of thing that just, you know, once in a while, just go down and take a look.
And even if there are people that, you know, don't necessarily know anything about these, they can even hire a handyman
Definitely.
to come in
Yep.
and take a look at your washer, your dryer, your stove, your refrigerator, any of the appliances
Yep.
to make sure hoses and things like that.
The cheap way is do it yourself, of course.
Do it yourself if you have
Yeah,
that ability.
Yeah, you're talking about hoses, the refrigerator, the lines that feed the ice cubes.
Yeah, I've been through that. Yep.
They are just brutal. They are
Yes,
just
they
brutal.
are.
They are. If you look at them, they're the tiniest little hose. But
And they're
they
plastic,
usually,
and
you
they're
know,
brittle.
they're brittle, and they're absolutely, and the clamps usually are the problem, where they clamp to one or the other, wherever they start from. And the worst thing is to find that, you know, when you bought the house, the basement was unfinished. Well, you said, you know, 10 years later, you said, oh, I'm going to finish the basement. So you put up a really nice ceiling, but you forget that you need access to that turnoff that's to that line.
Oh, yeah.
Of that. So
That's right.
To know where all your turnoffs are is like huge. Where if something's leaking, you want to be able to run to your turnoff and just shut the whole main house down. You don't want to sometimes
Okay.
just look for the one that you need to. Sometimes in a sink you have the one right there
Underneath.
underneath,
Right.
but sometimes, you know, it's the baseboard. You're not going to shut that down. You have to go down to get the furnace to stop, but you want to shut everything down because you don't know if other things are a problem too.
And if somebody is doing something in the house and you have an issue, turn it off underneath the sink, open the faucet.
Yes, yep.
And let the water run out.
Right, whatever might
so
be
that
there.
when you turn it off,
Yep.
you're not leaving water sitting in that pipe that's then going to freeze.
And I know
or
a
have
lot
problem.
of the older people we've worked with, the turning is a hard, that sometimes
True.
the older thing, so getting that replaced to a lever, just boom,
Okay.
and you're done. That turning part, I know has been an issue with a lot of, and they usually, they can't do it. Because they'll call us on the phone, they'll say.
Companies or companies like
Right.
ServPro that you work for,
Yeah.
these are all easy
Very
fixes.
simple, very simple thing, yeah. And a lot of times they'll call and we'll say, is the water heater, have you shut the water heater off? And they say, I can't turn the knob to shut the water from filling. So it's leaking at the bottom and it keeps filling at the top.
Or I don't know how to turn
Oh,
it
you
off.
don't know how, right. But most of the time it's right there, you know, it's right
Yep.
at the top of the water. So, but it's just a matter of doing that turning and it's a hard thing, but you can change those to those valves that just go boom, boom, and you're done.
Is there a list someplace online or with your company online or any place that you can say a checklist of these are the things I should look for and go through my house?
We have different pamphlets. We have a get ready for winter type pamphlet.
You do?
Yep, we do
Okay.
have those, and we usually have them around with us now.
So
We-
that's with
That's something-
ServPro.
That's
Okay.
with ServPro, yep.
All right.
I mean, we're in Haverhill, right on Route 97 in Haverhill. If anybody wants to stop by, we'd be glad to give
Okay.
them one.
All right.
And-
I think
and-
I may be going online to find one of those. and taking
yeah,
a stroll
yeah,
through my house
yeah,
and
ServPro-
upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah, ServProofHaverhill.com is our
Okay.
our website, or just ServPro generally.
Mm-hmm.
They have all these type of tips for different things, for weather
And we've talked basements, we've talked houses. We
Houses.
haven't talked attics.
attics. Yes, attics can be, most of the time in attics, ice dams. Big thing 2 years ago was ice dams. We did ice dams probably for 6 or 8 months after the actual occurrence of them. You get people from the Midwest, they don't understand what an ice dam is.
What
They
is
think
an
we're
ice dam?
Crazy. It's when you're losing heat in your attic.
Okay.
So that you've got snow on your roof and it's melting the snow that's right near the shingles, and that water is going down and it's hitting a section of your roof, your overhang,
Right.
that is now freezing. So that water is coming down liquid and it hits that area and it freezes. And then it melts a little more and it comes down and it freezes. And it begins to make this dam of ice at the bottom, right on your soffit, right at your soffit. So you have this bump of ice right here. So the water, nothing can move, everything's and then what happens is it's got no place to go, so it starts going up. And as it goes up, it creeps under all the shingles. And once
In
it gets,
your,
and once
in your
it,
house or in your roof?
well,
or
as
both.
long as it's over the soffit, you're okay.
Okay.
But once it gets into the living space, it's gonna hit that area and then start dropping in. So it's, you basically, your roof isn't one piece of wood. It's gonna have seams where your plywood is.
Ew.
So a lot of times they'll have that weather shield that
Yeah.
covers it, but sometimes if you don't, or if the ice dam gets that bad and it goes past the weather shield, it will start dripping in through a crack of the wood. And it drips into the attic and then into your house and then, so we had a lot last year that were
Okay.
basically the outside walls were the culprit, where everything was, it got to the point where it just started going down the outside walls. So it would go, you have that outside wall, you have your inside wall, and you have that space of insulation in between. So it gets into there and just starts dripping. And most of the time, people would see it in their basement first, because it's gone all the way down, now
And
it's
it's
coming,
melted.
now it's coming down the foundation and coming out.
And it's warm enough that it melts in the basement.
And the problem with that is too, you've got, if the water stays on the outside wall, it's gonna freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw, and it's gonna keep moving as it goes. Before, sometimes you wouldn't even notice it until it gets so bad that it hits your inside wall. But a lot of times it was a hidden type thing, and that was what a lot of the ice dams things we did. It finally got to the point where it was dripping from out of a window top or whatever, and they said, uh-oh.
Or a light fixture.
Or a light fixture, we didn't have too many that actually went
Okay.
to the middle of the rooms, but it can do that. But a lot of them, and it's the type of thing where it may be leaking here, but it followed that beam and it started going over there.
I had one of
Yeah,
those before.
yeah, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So it's a tricky thing, but the ice dams, it's important that the other thing with that is that can then lead to a mold problem in the attic.
Okay.
Whenever you add moisture to an attic, attics can be, minus 10 degrees and 4,000 degrees. You've got that big disparity in coverage of temperature. And
but
mold
when you
likes that kind
talk
of.
about that, it's funny because I was in my guest room one time, quite a few years ago, and for some reason, I mean, you go into the guest room, you clean it, and you clean the bathroom, and you do all the things that you do, but for some reason, I had the dog up in the bed, and I looked up and I went,
What is that?
I could see the water stain running down the 2x4 above the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I had never really looked at the ceiling in the guest room before. And I'm thinking, oh,
Where did that come from?
I think there's a problem in my attic. and I had no idea how long it had been there.
Yeah,
But that's another thing. Take a look at the ceilings
right.
and see if there are water stains that are going to let you know
Yep.
that there's something going on in
Yeah.
your attic.
And know your age, the age of your roof.
Yeah.
I got to my roof, was about 29 years old, and I was having ice dams after ice dam. Every winter it just seemed like the same thing. I finally
And
ended up
this-
going with
this
a metal
came-
roof.
Yeah,
with
this
a
came
metal
from
roof and-
something was wrong with the gutter.
With the gutter, yep.
And it had leaked
Oh,
in
yeah.
and it just hit that 2x4. It
Yeah.
came right across the ceiling.
Yep, ignoring something like that's not a great idea.
No,
It's better
because
to
then
have
you have to
someone
replace the
inspect
whole
it.
ceiling.
Right, it's better to have someone inspect it and
Yeah.
just take a look at it. Now, like in that case, ServPro would come out and, you've got a water damage. Okay, well, first we test the sheetrock to see if it's wet.
Yeah.
If it's not wet, then it might be something that happens earlier.
And that's what
maybe.
mine was. It had
Same
happened
thing.
earlier.
So now we
Yeah.
now we go to the next step. All right, did the water create any kind of mold up above that?
Yeah.
So we kind of look in the attic and move some of the insulation and just look around. And if there's no mold, then we'll say, okay, it looks like it's okay. Paint looks like it'd be a good option. You don't ever want to paint anything that's still wet.
Right.
Because you're only going to have chipping. It's not going to
And
it's not going to
it
adhere well.
actually had to be painted a couple of
Couple
times.
times,
Just
yep.
because to get rid of
The
it.
stainage, yeah,
It had
yeah.
had to have a special type of paint.
Yep, yep. And
First.
too much insulation in your attic is not great either, because you need your soffits to breathe
Mm-hmm.
air into your attic. If you put so much insulation, and your soffits are the part of the house where the roof comes down and it's leaning on those walls.
Right.
Air needs to go up into your attic.
To
your attic,
circulate.
your attic shouldn't be warm.
Right.
It should be whatever the temperature is outside, so it's gonna
Okay.
kind of reflect that. And it needs to be able to breathe. That air needs to be up there, So I go into some attics and it's just dead air, just like nothing's moving, and that's not good for the shingles. It's not good. You need that kind of aeration, and that again prevents a lot of stuff. If water does get in there, it can at least dry.
Yeah.
But we find a lot of or too much insulation. You get mold on the wood, and it has to be a cleaning thing.
Right.
And we've noticed that since home inspectors have come into play, they're looking in attics, and now mold is the buzzword. And
Yeah, it
anytime
is.
they see anything up there, we have to go.
mean-
We usually go in and we have to clean it up. And
You watch that HGTV
Yeah.
and it's like the minute they say mold, all of a sudden they've got the masks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody's leaving and they're.
Mold is a very personal thing, like we were talking about. It's very individually oriented.
Yeah.
What affects you doesn't affect me. So everyone, check with your doctors and that type of thing as to what your susceptibility, COPD, like you said, that type of
So
thing.
now that I think we've scared 90% of the homeowners in
No,
Georgetown
that's-
half to death.
That's one thing. That's one thing you should. I think it's more diligence. Just do
Yeah.
your due diligence, and
And
if you
that's-
see something,
what I
we're
said.
more than happy to come out and just
Take
take
a walk
look.
through your home.
Take a walk. If you
Take
see
a walk,
anything,
look at your ceilings, look at
Yeah,
your walls,
yeah,
look at your
absolutely,
floors.
absolutely. I mean, we're there for a resource. We don't mind. We talk with people on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
We talk with, and we go to homes. We have estimators. We have 2 estimators, and even myself sometimes will be talking at one of
Yeah.
our functions we have, and I'll tell them if you need somebody to come out, just let me know. I'll have
But-
one of my guys come out.
I mean, even people that are living in a home, they should do it themselves.
Definitely, yep.
Just take a
Just
look
because
around.
you're renting an apartment doesn't mean that you kind of relieved of your duty. You need
Yeah.
to let your landlord know, and again, if you have the reference of, just call ServPro, they come out and they'll do a free estimate. Doesn't mean that the cleanup's gonna be free, but at least at least
Yeah,
you know,
probably not.
at least you know what you're dealing with,
Yeah.
more. And
Yeah.
in New England, I was just talking to an estimator before I came down here, and he was just in a house, and it's like, 4 layers of flooring, 4 ceilings. You usually start with the plaster ceiling with the tin, then you come down.
We're so
to-
proud of our
Oh my
1,800
gosh.
houses, but
but
they have their
most of the
own
houses,
issues.
they built 10-foot ceilings, but now they're about 7-6. And so everything in between is just
Yeah.
one layer or another of something that the previous
Something
owners have
that's-
done.
that's there from
So,
before.
just a normal water dam, you say, it comes from the roof down, but it's going through probably 14 layers of flooring and stuff
Yeah.
as it's going through.
Yeah.
So each one has their own issue. You have asbestos, which tends to be things we
Yeah.
watch out for when we're with water damages, because you get into these basements, there's asbestos-covered furnaces, the asbestos in some tiling, the 9x9 tiles, that old 60s tile.
Yeah.
That usually, and
Okay,
everything.
now we're really getting.
Well, everything, but it's all part of a water damage thing that we have to look at,
Yeah.
and we have to, now with Massachusetts, we have someone to inspect each thing we remove. We're not allowed to remove anything until it's kind of tested,
Okay.
so that we know that, just for safety for you as the homeowner
Yeah.
and ourselves, that we're not removing something that has
Can't
asbestos
just throw it
in
in
it.
the dumpster anymore.
Right, you really need to know. And we have great subs that help us all the time with trash and with asbestos removal and cleaning of clothes and all that kind of stuff. So it's a great system. There's 1,700 franchises around. This franchise has been in existence 30 years. This year was
Okay.
our 30th year, so we,
So,
yeah.
okay.
But don't ever be afraid to call. There's no stupid questions. We've pretty much heard everything.
Yeah,
So,
well.
and we're glad to help any way we can.
Okay.
So, all right.
Well, thank you very much.
You're-
You've made me very nervous about living in my own home. I appreciate
No problem.
the time you
No
have given us
problem.
today.
No problem.
I'm Beverly Enos. Thank you for joining us today. Spotlight Georgetown, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Take a walk around your house. Make sure everything's going okay. Ceilings, floors, walls, all that kind of stuff. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.